been thinking about making a video about ward as a mechanic for a little while, and I touched upon some of my thoughts with it when talking about modern commanders design, the idea that modern commanders hold your hand. In this video here, I talked about how even things like slow-gurk seem to do everything for you, both enable the plan and do the plan, so you don't have to really work very hard towards it. A lot of modern commanders will wipe your ass for you and tell you you're pretty. And one of the culprits in that video that I talked about being the worst of all of this is Voja. Not only does it just do everything, it rewards you for having a wide board, it draws you cards, but it also has that ominous ward text on it. But already, one set later, I'm already impressed with some of the commanders in the latest set. I've already built Vihan Goldwaker, so now I've got a baker and a banker, and all I need is a candlestick maker, and I'm also quite impressed with Rebecca. Both of these introduce interesting spaces to build in and things to do with their commanders, and they don't have inbuilt protection, they don't draw you a card on said card, there's no ward there, they aren't both doing the thing and paying off the thing. For example of Vihan, he doesn't make the treasures, you have to make them yourself with other cards. And in playing Vihan a lot over the weekend at Command Fest, I realised that actually having the commander not enable the thing but be the payoff instead just feels like playing almost in a different game. There were games where I didn't do a whole lot compared to my opponents who would cast their commander and it would trigger and suddenly they're like a million miles ahead, but Vihan is an example of them peeling back a little bit. It's good to see. Anyway, you click on this video because you want to hear about ward. Well, I was always planning to talk about ward and its omnipresence in Magic at the moment, its overabundance in Magic at the moment. And then Gavin, the lead designer of Magic, or one of the lead designers of Magic, made a video talking about it a day or so ago and kind of stole my thunder. Also, it was a really reasonable and thought out video with some self-reflection, so it really stole my thunder. How am I meant to be angry about ward, Gavin, if you're going to be really fucking reasonable and point out that you probably use it too much? In Gavin's video titled The Future of Ward, with a thumbnail saying is ward a problem, he goes into detail about the addition of Shroud and its origins in older Magic, and then removing that to replace it with hexproof, and then finally landing on ward as a supposedly more fun or a better scaling version of hexproof. I'm not going to talk about Gavin's video full on verbatim here. I'm not going to copy every point that he says, and I just recommend that you watch it. I think the video is very, very good. The original point I was going to come to in this video is that ward is basically strictly worse hexproof, but no one really spoke about it in that way until, well, the Gavin video went live, and now I think people might have that language in their repertoire a bit better. Because we're all talking about how good ward is on Voja, and Voja is going to be the big culprit of them, the big focus of this conversation, but I guess the same goes for Tivit as well. Tivit's probably not as good as Voja in your casual tables. But imagine if either of these creatures had hexproof instead of ward. Imagine how insane these cards would be. And my original point that I wanted to make in a video is that Wizards of the Coast would never have even considered putting hexproof on these creatures, but instead put the conditional, the buyout hexproof, a hexproof that one day you can overcome by paying the cost. So yeah, your plowshares becomes 4 mana instead of 1. The point that I do like that Gavin gets to is that Ward 2 is being considered, or at least by himself, a future thing for cards that make the game more fun. Ward 2 or Ward 3 going on to huge haymakers that dominate the game is probably not a space that he personally wants to explore. Again, his video is about him and his approach towards design philosophy, not the entirety of Wizards of the Coast. So we may still see 3 mana super duper commanders with Ward 3 on them. We haven't seen one with Ward 4 yet, I think, but I guess that's not completely off the cards from other designers. The main crux of this video off the back of the fact that I couldn't make my own and got beaten to it in a way by Gavin, and in some ways it's good, because if I'd said a load of shit that didn't really line up with what he said, I'd sound like a right dumbass. But it's going back to that point about Wizards not putting hexproof on ridiculous haymaker commanders because they know that's too good. Meanwhile, ward is the hot freshness or the hot newness, and they've put it on a lot of stuff. A lot of things have ward now. He even explicitly says in the video that they always use things a bit too much once they keyword. The downside here is that ward is a frustrating mechanic that can be a bit feel bad compared to, say, keywording prowess, for example. What it really does note, though, seeing a video like this from a big designer at Wizards, is that they do listen and they do care, and they do work on the feedback of the community, whether that be directly from people at the rules committee, or whether that be the less privileged amongst us just shouting into the void on our YouTube channels or discussing things on Twitter. It is sad that the working schedule for Wizards of the Coast means they're designing things 2 years in advance, so if the feedback is heard loud and clear over the last couple months, we might not get to see the fruition of those changes for another 2 years. But a quick look over the main set for Thunder Junction, and we only see one legendary with ward attached to it, and that's Fibblethip, which I feel like, when you look at that card and read it, you're like, sure, he's lost and he's a slippery weasel and he's difficult to get rid of, so him having ward actually makes sense. There's nothing bad about the ward on that card. And there's only 2 cards with ward in the Commander product. Octavia Living Thesis being a card from Commander 2021 being reprinted, so, and it having ward 8 and being the 10 mana, this costs 8 less if you have 8 or more things in your... whatever, Octavia's fine. And the new one is the 3-color Felix 5 boots with Ward 2 and Menace. A 5/4 that says if a creature you control dealing combat damage to a player causes a trigger ability of an opponent you control to trigger, you trigger it additional time. He's a very fun on-hit commander. You're meant to put lots of boots and lots of swords on him and go wild. That said, it's not about actually him going wild. Gavin does mention him specifically as an example of something fun in Commander where the ward helps to protect you. It's super interesting because like Felix doesn't actually have to do the combat damage, so he does do something on the turn he comes down if you can get into combat with, say, a ward creature and him. But then again, I guess then people could kill him before the combat damage trigger is got. I get that here. Felix does look suspiciously like a good stuff commander with a ward attached to it and some evasion too. But I mean, ultimately, he doesn't really draw a card, and you still need to have an on-hit effect in play and make a connect with it. So it doesn't feel like the do a thing rewarded for a thing, all things in one commander that I was moaning about previously. I don't really like the cowboy stuff in Thunder Junction. I don't think it was done very well, and the humor's a little bit off too. But ultimately, I think Thunder Junction is full of really interesting and powerful cards, but at the same time, we aren't seeing overly powerful commanders too. So it just shows a little bit of progress, a little bit of positivity in terms of the movement Magic is taking in terms of the game pieces that are coming into the game. Some of the big scorecards are incredibly pushed and they're all at Mythic, which is all a talking point in itself. But overall, these legendaries don't make me want to headbutt myself in the dick. So that's a positive. Either way, I love the transparency that we get with Gavin having a YouTube channel and talking about these design things openly. Similar to how I've always loved Mark Rosewater's design articles, even if I don't necessarily agree with them. More of that open dialogue from Wizards is always welcome. And that's what I'll close the video on as well, is that I'm quite staunchly anti-Wizards sometimes when they have to do I'm giving them a free out here, right? But when they have to do the very obviously anti-consumer shit because they are owned by a huge company like Hasbro, who is hemorrhaging money, and they're one of the golden geese to be milked. And yes, I do believe you can milk geese. Not through the nipple though, it'd be through the... yeah. But something that we don't talk about enough is A, the positive things in general, but B is how open the conversation with the company that make the game in the Magic space is. We are incredibly lucky compared to a lot of other tabletop games and just games in general, if we include video games in that, for having such an open and honest dialogue with the games company when it comes to game design and where the game is going. It's just something that I wanted to observe, point out, and praise. And that's the video. I could have had a big rant about Ward in the past, but I actually see a positive movement forward. I actually think Thunder Junction is full of really fucking cool cards that I'm enjoying playing with. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. How do you feel about Ward in general? And how do you feel about the commanders of Commander Junction? The commanders of, we might as well call it Commander Junction. There's a lot of focus on legendaries this set, but the commanders of Outlaw Junction compared to those of the last couple of sets, like LCI and MKM, to use the acronyms. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to support the channel, there's a link to the Patreon down below as well, and I'll see you in the next one. Ta for now.